thing we didn't tell you is every time there's a meteor shower, a moon, a planetary event, it fogs in.
Oh, okay.
By
Just so I know
definition.
that, all right.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside for November 14th, 2016. All rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, as usual, I forgot to bring my notes,
Oh, well.
but minutes again.
Okay,
May we have a roll call, please?
yes. So, Director Warren,
Present.
Director Lohman,
Here.
Director Penrose,
Here.
Director Reddick,
Here.
Director Slater-Carter,
Present.
and Director Boyd is not here. Okay.
So item number 2 is special order of the day, and we have none. So we're going to move on to item 3, which is public comment. I see that there are no members of the public here who might wish to comment, so I'm going to close that item and move to item 4, and we're going to convene in closed session for the Ralph M. Brown Act. Item A, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957. Thank you, and we'll ask everyone to leave.
It felt very fall-like. So,
Okay, we're reconvening in open session, and there's nothing to report out of closed session. And we're moving on to item 6, the consent agenda. Is there a motion, a second to approve?
Corrections on minutes.
Is it something that we need to pull, or that you could, authorize?
Well, one of them is the same correction for last month. I don't know why I even have to bring it up again, the missing comma.
okay, where is it? Because
Missing comma,
In the roll call,
You're lucky
Roll
that
call,
Wilf
okay.
Walczak's not here.
all right. Where's,
in the roll call, there needs to be a comma before the second to the last director's name. The
Lohman,
rule,
comma, and.
the rule that I use is if the sentence doesn't work if you leave out the word and, then you need the comma. And the sentence will not work without the word and, therefore the
We
comma
will
has to be there.
note that. We were trying to find it after the last one and couldn't recall exactly where we were talking about. I will point that out. I flagged it. We've got it now.
And I wanted to ask Carl about the wording here in the minutes where it covers the attorney's report.
Oh,
Is that in fact what you said? And if it is, then I want to talk to you about this after the meeting.
I was focusing on the discussion of the recycled water project.
I think what you said was it was a choice of the Board of Supervisors.
Well, all we need to know for the minutes is whether it correctly reflects what he
Oh,
said.
no, it did not, I wouldn't have said they're not going to act to appoint in lieu for uncontested positions.
Okay, can you
No.
provide the correct language for the minutes?
Sure.
Okay. I'm gonna make a note. We can, yeah.
I would cross out not and say, is going to act to appoint in lieu or certify elections on December 13th, 2016. I don't know if I went into that level of detail, but if I had, that's exactly what I would have said.
He said the Board of Supervisors is going to act to appoint and move.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay,
Sure.
we'll make that correction.
So can I get a motion per amendment?
So moved.
The motion is for the whole consent agenda with those
Yes.
corrections? Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm sorry, it was Slater-Carter and Warren.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
With correction.
With the
And the
corrections.
corrections. And so there was a motion and a second. Are there any opposed? No, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is no old business to discuss under item 7, so we're moving on to item 8, new business. Item 8A is review and approve amendments to the conflict of interest code.
Yes. To that section here. So this was last officially changed September 28, 92, so quite some time ago. There have been corrections that were actually made by staff, things like the title changes and such that were sent to the county, but it's actually supposed to be changed here at the board level, and I don't know where that sort of fell away. So we want to officially make those changes. We need to do it, one, because the language needs to meet the current requirements, and obviously we want the titles and positions to match those that are required. I had already discussed the changes with the attorney to make sure that he was comfortable with that. And so you have both the corrected one as well as the old one in there if you wanted to look at the changes.
I have to say, I appreciate not including the big language from the state code. I hate that. So, with that comment, I move to approve the amended conflict of interest code as presented.
Is there a second?
There is, I second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I would just like to point out for everyone though, that it's interesting that the discretionary decisions about conflict of interest for contractors are also subject, the written determinations to Public Records Act.
Yeah, I
Yes.
thought that was interesting and a
Yep.
good idea.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have there been any, I'd like to have any things like public records requests noted for the board's information.
When we get to the manager's report, I'll comment on that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 8B, discuss and amend unrepresented employee manual establishing wages, benefits, and terms and conditions of employment effective January 1, 2017.
You have the report in front of you. I'm happy to answer any questions. Basically, the bullet points that are included in the staff report show what the significant changes were.
I only have one comment. On what planet is 400 hours of vacation leave a reasonable cap? That's 10 weeks. That's just ridiculously excessive. And if that stays there, I have to vote no on this.
Well, for years, the state of California has a much higher cap. You had people
Okay,
taking 16
one
months
idiot
off.
government agency doesn't justify another one.
Actually, there
I'm
are
just
many
saying,
agencies.
400 has been established to be a reasonable cap for government, actually.
Yeah. Actually, there are other agencies that have no
Yeah.
cap or a considerably higher
Yes.
cap. And-
Government is not the example to use. Private industry is the example to use. And my cap,
Private industry?
my cap is, I believe, 1.5 years accrual.
I have no cap.
And the 1.5 year accrual in my company is probably very generous for private industry.
I never had any.
The problem is, it's payable at termination. So an employee could go accumulate the 400 hours without taking it and then get 10 weeks extra pay when they quit.
Well, I guess we need to put that into the budget as part of our reserves.
No. We need
Makes
to
sense to
reduce
me.
the 400-hour limit. You know,
I think we've
I would
already agreed on this
suggest-
cap.
I think that was negotiated, and I
Yeah.
think the board agreed to it in
Yeah.
principle at the last meeting.
I don't remember that.
This is part of the MOU.
The MOU, and so all we're looking for is a similar parity between the unrepresented employees and the rest of the employees.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say I agree with Leonard, but I will certainly support this.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Nay.
We have one opposed.
And I
Motion
I
carries
said aye
unanimously.
too, just for the record.
So it was
It was
4 ayes,
silent.
1 nay.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
We're moving on to item 8C, adopt a resolution for paying and reporting the value of employer-paid member contributions to CalPERS.
This is a requirement that CalPERS has, and every time we change what the employer-paid member contribution is, we have to send them a new resolution notifying them of the fact. When we adopted the new MOU, it changed how much SAM pays for the member and the employee contribution. So this reflects that change.
Can you, in simpler language than what's in here, to make sure that I understood this correctly,
Could you explain what the changes are regarding the employer and employee contributions?
Yes, so in the middle bullet points, when you see the 2%,
And
that's the change. The previous one said
Uh,
3%.
Which PDF page are we on?
That's on 59, and there's the 4 whereases and then 3 bullet points.
Um,
The bullet points are in bold.
Yes.
I'm going down to 59. No, that can't be the right page number, that's the next agenda item.
Oh, no, resolution finding the
59 on the
value.
paperless
Mine.
packet, PDF.
And on the bottom, it says 59.
So 59 in the box too.
I don't understand. PDF
Would you like
page.
me to read it?
Oh, that's the resolution, I thought that
Yes.
was the next agenda item. Okay.
Yeah, that's the resolution, and that, it says 2%, because up until the new MOU this past year, it was 3%. So we will be doing this again this time next year, because it will go down to 1%, and then the following year, according to the MOU, we will no longer be paying the employee portion, so it'll step down into that. And each year, at this time, we'll have to do this resolution to notify PERS.
Okay,
That's what I wanted to make sure of, because a couple of years ago, when I said that the state law required the employer paying employee share to be phased out, people in this room said, no, that's not true.
It is not a requirement, it is a heavy suggestion.
I thought it was a requirement.
It is not a requirement. It is the goal of PEPRA that employers stop paying, and the deadline target was 2018. But it did not mandate for special districts that you have to do it. And, but most agencies are striving to get to that 2018, because it was the spirit of PEPRA as opposed to a mandate.
So this is basically implementing the phase out.
Yep.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution next in order for paying and reporting the value of employer paid member contributions?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 8D, adopt sewer authority wage schedule for fiscal year 2016-17.
So once again, this is a mandatory requirement. In order for CalPERS to recognize wages, they must meet all of these requirements. One of them is that they have to be in a publicly adopted wage schedule, which is not the same thing as a publicly adopted MOU. And it has to be done each year. It has to list all of the steps and all of the wages. The second thing is that any special compensation has to be in a publicly adopted MOU. We have satisfied that. We are now satisfying the wage schedule portion of that. And this is incredibly important for anybody who might plan on retiring in the next year or two, because obviously when they do the look back, they will only recognize wages that have been publicly adopted in that fashion. So right now, the only 2 years where we have a publicly adopted wage schedule were last year and this year.
Wow.
Yes.
what would be some examples of, I think you called it special?
Compensation,
For this agency, what would be some examples?
certification pay. Let's see, I'm trying to think of, if we had uniform allowance or something like that, anything that's above and beyond just the regular hourly rate of pay that is included in PERSable compensation. So for example, we pay the operator to be here on a holiday. There's a special rate that goes along with that, only for that scheduled day. That's special compensation reportable. Those have to be either in a publicly adopted MOU or a publicly adopted policy.
So you mentioned uniforms, so that includes the boot allowance?
Correct. Correct. Anything that is reportable, that one is not reportable to PERS, but if we had a uniform allowance, for example, police and fire, they're given an allowance to get the uniform. Anything like that that is reportable to PERS has to be in a publicly adopted MOU.
Makes sense.
It's good government. Okay, so, is there a motion to adopt the biweekly wage schedule?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving right along here. Item 8E, authorize staff to publish a request for proposals for the comprehensive hydraulic modeling identified in the infrastructure budget for 2016-17.
So as you recall, during the budget process, the project was included in the budget, and the money that was put in there was at the request of Half Moon Bay. And then it was to be brought back to the board for direction on how expansive this project would be. It could be anywhere from a dust-off of the analysis that was done some years ago to what the city of Half Moon Bay had requested, which was a brand new, fresh look at the hydraulic work from sort of stem to stern. So based on this, staff would like to move forward with getting this work done. So one, we need direction as to which of those we're going to go out for a proposal so that we get what we're asking for. And two, to get the authority, because the assumption is it will exceed the manager's authority.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for staff?
Just one question, the bit about the input from the Half Moon Bay again, consulting engineer. Is that just input, or is that like approval from Half Moon Bay, or is it just additional input coming in from Half Moon Bay?
We envisioned it being additional input. What we would like to do is, if there are any questions, since Half Moon Bay was one of the agencies that was requesting that this work be done, we want to make sure that when we develop the RFP, that we get in the RFP whatever questions they might have from the start.
That isn't clear in the wording.
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to clarify exactly what that means, but in addition to that, it's basically lopsided as proposed. I think that this needs to include asking the other two agency managers if they think that our engineers should also potentially provide input.
I agree.
And remember that our general manager has substantial experience with recycled water projects, including one with a JPA sewer plant selling water to a water district.
Well, I think that makes sense, because we're going to want each agency's model input and output as well to feed into the model.
Okay, so how do we tweak the language here?
I suggest we bring it back in December.
I don't see a need to bring it back in December, and I'd like us to move forward with direction that perhaps you engage it at the general manager's meeting, monthly meeting. We want to make it clear that we totally support moving forward with a hydraulic model. It's been 12 years since the Corallo project. Flow has changed, technology has changed.
And the engineer has
It's
changed.
not enough anymore to do a spreadsheet sort of analysis. We want to build a software model and test it with a design storm so that we can be proactive and not reactive going forward. We want to understand the pressure points, bottlenecks, all that stuff. And we think it makes sense for a variety of reasons. But Deborah, you may have.
No, I mean, it sounds to me like we need to update what we're doing, and that, the last time this evaluation was done was when,
About 12 years ago.
1990 something, or
No,
was it
2004.
2004?
But the one before that was in the 90s.
Yeah,
Well, and certainly with direction, what we can do is when Kishan works on the RFP, he can certainly send it to the 3-member agency.
Yeah, I have a suggestion, since the engineers from all the 3-member agencies are going to be a part of the technical advisory committee for the collection systems, we can bring it in that committee and formulate an RFP which is acceptable to all the member agencies, and then go forward and bring it back to the board if required for
I would like to see that language instead of the language that we've got here, which is substantially different from what you're talking about.
yeah.
That works, as long as we're keeping it moving forward, that works for me. Any other comments?
Well, I want to mention again what I mentioned before, that I'm not really convinced we need to start from scratch, but I'll vote for it because I don't
Well, I'm
want
going
to
to
hold
vote,
this up yet again.
I'm going to vote no until I see language that's clear about what we're voting on, because until that, all we have is a staff report to rely on, and I'm not comfortable with that.
I think we can trust staff to make the changes that we're asking for.
Well, given Catherine's comments, I might reconsider. So what happens if,
We're in the holiday season. I don't see that we're gonna be getting a whole lot of work done in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And certainly with the concerns in mind, the language for the RFP can be included in the next meeting packet as well.
No, I'm not for delaying this, you know, if you'd like to receive a modified version from staff, you know, after this meeting, to increase your comfort level, that's fine. We're not gonna support, you know, delaying moving forward with it.
Well, the RFP would reflect the concerns from the member agency's engineers. So what would get published would be what those engineers have weighed in on. We wouldn't be contracting for it with any agency before bringing it to the board, because the assumption is that all of the proposals will exceed my authority. So we're not asking for the authority to actually contract, we're just asking for the authority to write the RFP and publish it. And we can add input from the engineers.
And bring it back to a meeting of the board, so that the board could see the RFP?
Please.
Yes. That's
And
it.
I would like the minutes to be, in this instance, not just the action minutes, but to, in fact, reflect the discussion.
yes?
And is there a particular issue that just the reflection that you think it's important that the engineers are consulted from each agency?
At this point, the staff report reads that Half Moon Bay is the unilateral, is the only agency to be consulted. And I think that's not perhaps the intent, but it is certainly what the language is.
But we will be paying for half of it.
Well, yes, that's Sam.
Is the plan then that if we move forward with this, that the RFP will come back at the next meeting?
Yes.
And we could ensure with our agencies that Chuck's input and our engineers have put their input in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I mean, this won't be released to the public, it's gonna come back to us first.
We'll bring it back at the December meeting, we should be able to. If we can get the response from the member
Okay.
agency engineers. If we aren't able to, because I don't know what their schedules are, if the member agency engineers are not able to get their comments and feedback back to us in time, then it would have to be the January meeting.
Yeah, because.
You'll need to contact.
Well, we have a meeting early in December. Oh, we've got early, yeah, December,
Early
we're in
December.
November already.
Yeah.
You'll need to contact ours pretty quick, because my last understanding is that our engineer, who's a senior VP of KJ, is mostly retired, and he's just sort of keeping us on as his only client.
What we'll do is we'll submit it to Chuck and have him
Yeah.
send it
But
to
I'm
the
saying, you know,
appropriate.
as soon as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say hustle it.
yeah, yeah, we will, but without knowing their response time.
Yes.
We will bring it back as soon as appropriate, once we get everybody's input.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, so with those understandings,
We're just
Well,
getting
it's just-
direction,
Yeah, it's just
right?
direction, yeah.
And just to clarify, at this point, we are proposing that this would be a start from fresh, full look, as opposed to just a dust off. That's what Kishan and I would recommend at this time, given the flow issues that have come up, the calibration issue that's come up with regards to the Montera station, that we want to make sure that we're building it off of accurate data.
Yeah, and, you know, the technology has improved, the software's improved, so we can get more and more accurate data, which is good.
you know, come to think of it, there's something inherent in what Beverly just said. Let's not miss that. Because of the questions about the flow readings, I think those need to be resolved before we do the hydraulic analysis.
Well, each agency will submit its flows for input into the model, then the model's going to, run it and calibrate it, we'll be able to see, any sort of discrepancies or problems during the process.
And it will take into consideration each of those issues at each of those flow points, each of the data points. And Kishan will be working with them and they'll know this is calibrated in this fashion because the manufacturer's recommendation, installation recommendation, so they'll have all of that data.
Yeah, they would also assess on the 2-year flow and a 10-year flow, and also assess the I&I which is going on to various sewer lines.
Yeah,
Total study.
I'm just thinking that, to have an accurate flow model, we have to have accurate readings.
The readings are accurate, that we do know. The question is, now that we have those accurate readings and now we're starting to see what the flow ratios are, that's what's changed, is the calibration change that was done at Montera. So once that was done, of course that feeds into the whole system. But we also have we have new data points now. We have Frenchman's Creek, which we didn't have before. And then we can also add in the data from the Half Moon Bay City flow meters. So they have all of these data points, and some of them I know would not have been the same data points perhaps 12 years ago.
So the Frenchman's Creek permanent meter is in?
Yeah, mid-month.
Last week of October.
Yeah, see, that's where the issue is, like Half Moon Bay hasn't increased its land use dramatically to, increase our monthly flow by 10%. It's not land use, it's not I&I, it's the way it's being calculated in your 2 parts of the world.
It's the calibration when we determined that it was not calibrated correctly in Montera because of the location. And we don't know how far back that goes. So it may have been that way in 2004, it may not have been that way in 2004. We have no way of knowing, which is why it makes sense to do a brand new assessment based on the current corrected calibration.
As I clean up my house and come across random old board packets, I gotta say, the flow percentages are all over the map over the years. I mean,
We need to fix
there
that.
really
We
isn't
don't need
much
to debate that,
consistency.
no, I don't think.
Yeah. So a lot of issues, but I think we can move forward.
So we will bring that back. More than likely, it'll be January, the first meeting in January.
So moving on to item 9, General Manager's Report.
So you have the report. There's a few things I want to note verbally that wasn't in the standard report. One is a reminder that this Saturday at 11 o'clock is the strategic plan, just in case it escaped you guys. Everybody's thinking Turkey Day.
Right here, right?
Right here at 11 o'clock. Sam will be providing lunch because we anticipate it being several hours.
Sweet.
Lunch from where?
It'll be just like a deli platter kind of thing.
Just
So.
don't make it turkey, that's all.
No, I absolutely.
With cranberry sauce?
Yeah,
No
there
tryptophan.
were no turkey, no turkey. I wanted to note that Director Lohman and I met as part of the outreach committee, and I will be bringing something back, hopefully, probably not at the December 12th meeting, but perhaps at the January meeting, one of the 2 January meetings, to talk about the outreach component for the recycled water project and potentially what we want to budget, at least for the 25% design piece of the project, and get the board's approval for that, and then we can send that to the member agencies. And then the final thing is I did attend the Calpelra conference in Monterey, and it was, as always, a very well-attended, over 1,000 participants that go to that. It's a very, very large conference.
In one room?
In Monterey. And with the Monterey Conference Center down, it was quite interesting how they were able to accommodate everyone. But I was able to change my hotel to a less expensive hotel. It was a bit of a hike for me, but I was able to save some money, which was good. And there were many conversations around the Affordable Care Act, the new Fair Labor Standards Act with regards to what's considered regular rate for overtime purposes. And then there have been some changes in the court determinations for certain things, like the MMBA and other labor relations, that is the dog leg left or right, something very different than what we've seen in the past. And so it's definitely one of those areas where if you blink, you miss it, and suddenly you're in trouble where you thought you knew what you knew, and now the court rulings or PERB rulings are going in different directions. So it's keeping everyone on their toes. So it's very important to go to this conference. And I want to thank the board for allowing me that opportunity to
I'm
attend.
guessing next year's might even be more interesting.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, yes.
Things will
Now that-
change.
Now that there are some changes in that
Maybe or
area.
maybe not.
Potentially it could. And as always, anytime there's a changeover, then there's usually a changeover in appointees, and then sometimes those roll out to things like per board and stuff. But so I did want to thank you for that opportunity to attend. And then also to point out that Director Warren had mentioned there was something you wanted to talk about with regards to a public records request.
Well, specifically, the reason that I requested many years ago the Public Records Act request to be in the manager's report is so we know what the public is interested in.
Okay.
And so what was this
Okay.
request for?
I wasn't quite sure. I was not able to find exactly how there didn't seem to be consistency. Sometimes I saw where it was just the number of them requested, and then sometimes they reported what it was.
It's supposed to list what the documents
Oh,
were
okay.
that were requested.
I wasn't quite sure, so thank you for clarifying that. I'll make sure to do that in the next round. Basically, we received a request for the cost of what had been expended for SRT for the recycled water project from 2008 going forward. And so
But the board asked for that.
well, no, the board asked for what we've spent, everything what's been spent since
So the
that.
request was specific for.
It was very specific to
Okay.
SRT. And so I did provide that. They didn't want copies of invoices or anything. But we did have to pull all the old invoices from storage because obviously, or not so obviously, the way items were recorded in the past in the accounting system, if we paid an SRT invoice, it was just the invoice number and the amount. And I wouldn't have been able to look in QuickBooks and find out whether it was recycled water, the wet weather project, general support. I couldn't tell, so we had to pull each and every invoice to be able to find out. Now with the accounting system that we have, we can actually segregate by project. So at any given time, we can run a report and see. But unfortunately, we couldn't do that historically, so we've now made copies of all of those invoices. Kishan has those, so if we were to get another request, we wouldn't have to go digging into the old files. We've got copies already, specifically for that project. But that's what
Probably
it
might be
was.
catching up with Leonard in terms of archival knowledge.
Yeah, so it was definitely interesting to go back and look at
Is it
that.
appropriate to ask who made that request, or?
Yeah, one can always ask. I always advise you can ask why people are asking, you can ask why they want it. They're not required to answer either question.
I would suggest that we not ask why, but I think it
course
might
not,
be
but-
useful to know who asked.
Yeah.
Now, legally, they don't have to identify
Exactly.
themselves, but.
Right.
But it is useful to know.
identified?
Yeah, I got an email from
It's probably-
a gentleman.
Who was, is?
I would hate to do it off of recall. I can certainly, I wasn't prepared to with the who, what, where, when, how, why for the meeting, but I will certainly provide that to the board so that it's out there. And in the future, I will summarize it. I don't want to go through the great long detail for the manager's
Right.
report, but I'll do a summary going forward.
Yeah, it just helps us to be aware of what's
Sure.
in the wind.
But, and I would anticipate as whenever we have a project that might be like this, you'll get those kinds of requests.
So
Right.
in the future reports, you'll.
I will
list
include
what
that.
What the
Yep.
records were.
I sure will. And if there's more than one, I'll just do brief descriptions of each one.
Years ago, I went down to CCWD to look at some of their public records, and I was actually aghast that they had Post-it notes in the binders showing who asked for this record on what date. I didn't like that.
Your name was there a lot?
Well, I don't know, they did put the Post-its in until after you
After
left.
you left.
Oh, so you'd have to go back later to see if
back
there was a
in 2
Post-it
weeks.
note, right? So you have my report if there are any questions regarding that. And I did want to draw attention again, we are doing the monthly collection system reports. These look the way we've created them, but these are basically the items that are identified in the collection system agreements for things that have, I guess, been asked for quite some time, and for whatever reason, my predecessors just didn't do it. So we're trying to listen to the member agencies and give them the reports. I haven't gotten any feedback if the format works, but the data's there, so I'm hoping that's a starting point.
I have a question for Tim. When you use one of those circle clamps, do you automatically go out and order a replacement to have in stock?
Circle clamp for the repair that we did on the IPS line.
Yeah.
We actually have more than just one circle clamp, and we have a whole lot of
They got a drawer full.
Yeah. Do we replace them right away? No, because we do have more than just one in stock. So.
Duct tape.
You know how many,
But they are on sale at USA Blue Book right now, and we are gonna order some more.
We get our MacGyver going and we're ready to go. That
Stocking
tape will
stuffers.
travel.
you know how many clamps CCWD got back when they abandoned the old 10-inch pipeline? They got back a huge number, like some 3-digit number of clamps, I think.
Stainless steel, they're still good,
Yeah.
if they're American stainless.
So it happens, they have a bonded rubber piece on the inside, so when you attach them, if they're there for any length of time, you can't separate them. Not the ones that we use.
Yep.
Different style of clamp perhaps.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood what I heard then from CCWD.
I met the guy who invented the clamp. Okay, item 10, attorney's report. Do we have one?
No, I will pass on
Okay.
anything further.
All right. And do we have a director's report from anyone?
I just got one quick one. I went down to the Cal LAFCO conference.
Wow.
It was more fun. Interesting thing, the first evening what they have is a regional wine and beer competition.
Yay.
No wonder you went.
That's a good
And,
report.
you know, everybody brings wine. You get little chips and everybody gets to vote, and then there's a little prize
Yeah.
for the best wine and the best beer and stuff like that. But the important stuff was there were two things. One, in the legislatures, what's happening, this may be of interest to us up here. In the past, LAFCOs were set up to control all the special districts and boundaries and all that kind of stuff. What's happened 6 times so far, including places like Isla Vista, the legislature has passed a single-purpose bill for, like, Isla Vista was an example, that completely bypasses the LAFCO process. And they said, oh, these are non-precedent setting,
Right.
like they always do. But people are concerned that, you know, some legislator is trying to help his people, they say, oh, we can expedite it through. But this process is, LAFCO is freaked out because this seems to be totally illegal and bypasses, because the LAFCO group spend all this time checking every single possible combination of problems that can occur. The legislature obviously doesn't, and people are concerned this could, down the road, have all kinds of problems occur. So that's been a major concern from LAFCOs now, to try to shut that process down of bypassing
Wow.
them out
Well,
there.
given
Let's
that,
all keep in mind, that's how MWSD got to be MWSD, was LAFCO circumvention legislation.
no,
Yes.
No.
It allowed,
Uh-huh.
it allowed the MSD board of directors to go directly to the voters and say, should we become elected?
and one of the issues with LAFCO is it circumvents the voters without a great deal of,
Well,
Fanfare.
LAFCO is 100% politics, even though the LAFCO commissioners will sit there and flap their lips and say, this is not political. It's 100% politics.
it's human.
And
Back to my report. for a moment. The other one, which could potentially be concerned up here, you get a tour on the first morning if you want to go, you know, you drive around. Part of the tour was to go up to Lake Kachuma, which is sort of, you know, beside Half Moon Bay. It was sitting at 7.
Beside Half Moon
What?
Bay?
What? Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara,
I was like, oh.
Santa
I
Barbara.
got 7 things going here, I'm trying to get them all in. It was at 7% of capacity,
7.
and if it dropped a little more, they would not be able to pump water out of the
It
lake.
is still at 7%?
It was at 7% when we were standing right there looking at it. It was like nothing in the lake.
There was an article in the Washington Post today about it. I think it was Washington
And
Post.
the concern for us was when people asked questions like, well, where are you gonna get the water? First answer was, well, we're expecting a lot more water from the Delta tunnels. And everybody from Northern California immediately started screaming and yelling and hooting and stuff like that. But just for the people up here, Southern California wants more water. And, you know, there are more people down there than there are up here.
Better there than here.
Prop
So,
53.
yeah,
Yeah,
so hold on to all the water up here, so, that's it.
okay, anybody else? If there's no further reports, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We beat your clock.
We-